Hello, this is Rachel from 7 and All coming to you with a chatty April homeschool recap and update. So first of all, how is your homeschool going this April? Are you winding up your school year? Are you starting new things? Let me know in the comments how it's going. Go ahead and share. I love to chat with you guys about our various and unique homeschool journeys. Now, if you've been following along, you've probably noticed that in our homeschool, we've kind of been gradually rolling into our new levels from probably February up until now. I shared my first grade homeschool curriculum picks back in February, I think, and at this point now at the end of April, we have gone ahead and we've started all of the things for the next year of homeschool. As a lifelong homeschooler, I don't tend to be super attached to the beginnings and ends of school years. We just roll and start new levels when we're ready to start the next level. So at this point, we have fully begun our first grade and pre-K homeschool routine. We started it. I am so excited. It is really fun to be starting some of these new things, starting to dive into things a little bit deeper than at the kindergarten level. But getting into these early elementary years, it's been a really fun beginning, and I'm going to talk about that in this video. So first thing to update from this month, my husband was away on a trip with his work. My husband does not have the kind of job where he needs to travel a lot. I know that many of you do have spouses who travel quite a bit for work. For him, this is pretty unusual. Just about once a year he has to travel for work. So this was my first time being home with 3 boys now, with my husband away on work. He was gone for 5 nights. And this time, there was nothing crazy that happened. Last year, while he was gone, a tree fell on our electricity and cut out all the electricity in the middle of the night. So this year, there was nothing crazy that happened. So that was really awesome. And we did it, and he came back all safe and sound. So that was one adventure from our month. Another thing I thought about looking back on this past month is that we have really been leaning hard into Spanish lately in our homeschool and in our home life. And I believe I have shared about this in previous videos, that while I was pregnant and, a little bit in survival mode, I feel like I was not doing as much with Spanish as I would like to. And now that my brain is functioning at a higher capacity again, we've been really leaning hard into Spanish. And also, as our boys are getting older, we're realizing how much work it does take to keep growing and building their Spanish skills. So we've been making that a big part of our everydays throughout the month of April. We have started, I think we started in March, and we've continued in April doing a once-a-week Spanish conversation class with my husband leading it and a couple of other little boys who are also coming from a bilingual family. So that is something that my boys really look forward to, is once a week time with their friends, but not just doing whatever they want to. We are intentionally working on playing some games that challenge them to use Spanish, to just conversation games that get them using what they know. Because something we've noticed with our sons is that they understand a lot. We'll say just about anything to them in Spanish and they'll respond. And so we know they're understanding it. But if we ask them, I can say, ponte tus zapatos, vamos a la casa de tus abuelos. They understand that, they know what's happening. But if I ask them, hey, tell me how to say we're going to grandma's house in Spanish, they look at me blankly. Or if I say, how do you say let's go in Spanish? Sometimes the individual translation of individual words, they don't realize that they know it. I know that they know it. They have a comprehension of those words, but they are not necessarily able to produce them or necessarily able to translate on command. And it's like they know Spanish, but they don't necessarily feel like they know it. So right now we're working on getting them to feel like they know this, getting them to take ownership of their own language journeys to some extent, to feel like, hey, I do speak Spanish and I can use it and I can bring these words into use, not just receptively understand the words. We're really working to get to that next level. I shared this curriculum, Homeschool Languages, in an earlier video this month, and this is actually a curriculum that I have recommended to others, but I've never really expected to use it in my homeschool. And that's because we've been speaking Spanish to our boys since birth. They understand it quite a bit, So this is definitely a curriculum meant for beginners to the language. I didn't foresee using it in our homeschool, but because Homeschool Languages wanted to partner with me, because I'm passionate about teaching languages and wanted to share this with you guys, I did. But actually using it in our homeschool has been an absolute delight, and I'm seeing real fruit from it, especially with my younger son, whose Spanish knowledge is not as advanced as my oldest. As I'm opening up this curriculum and going through it with my oldest, he's pointing to all these pictures, he's pointing to all these flashcards. He knows this vocabulary very well already. But for my younger son, some of this is still new to him. It is a lot of things he needs to learn. And doing it together with my older son is really nice, actually, because it gets my older son using what he already knows, and it's kind of challenging my younger son to get up to that next level of learning some of these new things and using what he knows. So we are moving through this definitely faster than I would recommend, or faster than I would expect anyone to if they were starting this from scratch. We are somewhere in the second unit right now, maybe 13 lessons in. So we're moving through it faster, but I'm still finding it to be really valuable and really fun to be playing these games. My kids love games these days. That is just what they absolutely love right now. But playing games that specifically focus on getting them using the Spanish that they know. In addition, for my older son, a part of him leveling up into first grade is we have started Llamitas Level 2, which is for grades 1 through 3. I am loving this. He was so excited to start this, and then as we're getting into it, I'm just appreciating it so much more. I've made a flip through video on this. I can link to it down below, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But it is cool to see my son now at the point of being able to read sentences in Spanish, being able to choose the right answer, fill in the blank in Spanish. Like, that takes a lot. You know, we've spent a lot of years laying these foundations, and to see him realizing, hey, I can begin to read in Spanish. He's not a fluent reader, but he's figuring it out. He's figuring out that he can decode in Spanish now too. He has that foundation in Spanish phonics. He's beginning to decode. He's getting the hang of, you know, hey, the same skills that I have in English, I can apply it to Spanish. He's now finding nouns in Spanish, the sustantivos. They have activities on that in this book, learning more specific vocabulary. Yeah, I'm just like paging through this. We're gonna get to do some math, and he's gonna love that because he just loves math. Volcanoes, we're building a volcano, learning about parts of a volcano in Spanish. Like, it's definitely leveling up, and that's exactly what I want for his Spanish. Really excited about that. And I'm also just challenging myself to be using more Spanish throughout the day, reminding my husband, hey, you know, you're the native speaker in this family. Remember to actually use it with the boys as much as you can. And my son actually suggested the other day, hey, how about we do a 5-day Spanish challenge and then have some kind of reward at the end of it? And that sounds like a great idea to me. It also sounds a little bit intimidating. Now, also for first grade, we have started Sequence 1 from Gentle and Classical for our literature, Bible, and history studies this year. And this is really fun because I did not focus at all on history for kindergarten. This is really our first steps into the very interesting world of learning history. And we're learning history through literature and through exploration. I shared a little bit of my planning process for Sequence 1 in a different video, so I can link to that down below, or if you have any questions, please ask. But we're using Sequence 1 as our outline, as our inspiration, taking these topics, but I'm also adding on a little bit because I'm excited. I find history very fascinating. So I'll just share a little bit about some of the resources we've been using. The first history unit is talking about the age of explorers and exploration. So we've read some really good books. Two main explorers we're focusing on are Ferdinand Magellan and Christopher Columbus. This, Magellan's World, was a very good, very detailed book. This is not just like your quick picture book read. This is meaty, long. It's got some very vivid paintings. This took us a couple days to read through. Very excellent and detailed book. I learned new things about Magellan and more things about the details of this very interesting voyage and the dramas and the difficulties. So this was one of the books we read. For Columbus, we read both of these books, Encounter by Jane Yolen and Columbus, an autobiography by Demi. Really, really excellently done. I feel like I don't tend to have the history approach of just heroifying historical figures or moralizing from their lives. I tend to be like, hey, let's see what has happened. And yes, we are not eyewitnesses. We're basing history off of these different primary sources, getting the best idea that we can. And history is complicated. It's not like there are characters that lean more towards heroes and characters that definitely lean more towards villains, but the overall story is definitely complicated, and human history is kind of broken, and humans have often not followed God very well, even those who claimed to. So I appreciate books that kind of bring in some of that complexity, that people have done really interesting, really amazing things, really incredible feats. Like navigating across an uncharted ocean is a pretty incredible feat. But that doesn't always mean that you were the nicest person to hang out with, the most trustworthy person for your bosses, or the best boss yourself, or good at interactions with other people. So I appreciate this in our literature approach to history. Also, I should mention that with adding in some extras to our history study, some of these topics and units are definitely going to take longer than initially scheduled in Sequence 1. I'm already finding, so in the Sequence 1 schedule, you're supposed to spend 2 weeks on most units, on most history units. Now, Explorers is a very interesting one, and one that I had some good extra resources on, so we are definitely taking 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks to do this unit. I'm totally fine with that. For me, Sequence 1 is not about finishing this in a specific 36-week period, but about, dipping our toes into the very interesting world of learning history. And we aren't just reading. I have really fallen in love with using plain old-fashioned notebooks as a learning tool in our homeschool, and we are continuing with that. My son doesn't write much yet. I will probably have him do some writing and drawing in his notebook, but for the most part, I'm still doing the writing as he's a brand new first grader. I'm still doing the writing, but after we read, we're talking about, hey, what stood out to you? What do you think is worth remembering? And I'll take what he says and write that in the notebook, and then I'll also add some of my own thoughts, because I might have a little bit more wisdom and perspective to offer than just a 6-year-old. So we're sharing our ideas on what's worth remembering from this story. And I'll write down his ideas as well as my own. So we're co-journaling through this at this point. We're also adding in some things that we're pasting in. This was a cool activity from this History Pockets, Explorers of North America. This really brought living on a ship to life. And it was a job posting of the different types of jobs required for these explorations, these ships. And so we went through and discussed all the different jobs and what they required. And I had my son choose which job would he want to have on one of Columbus's ships, and he chose the ship's steward. Where is it? Yes, the stewards. Looking after the food and the equipment on the ship, being in charge, keeping track of all the equipment. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like that would be a good job for you. He's got some insight there. So we're going to be continuing to add some more cutouts of different types of ships to our journal, and just building that over time and building that over our different history units. Another aspect we are using is the History Timeline Notebook. And to begin this notebook, because we haven't done anything with timelines before. We haven't done anything with history before. To begin, I started with going to the pages and adding in our family's birth dates. So we talked about all the different members of our family, and we found the years when they were born, and we added them in so that we could visually see when my boys were born, when I was born, my husband, their grandparents, when they were born, and going back in the pages. And then we have to go back a lot of pages to when Columbus lived, a lot of pages to when Magellan lived, who was pretty close to when Columbus lived. So I love this as a tool for them to kind of get some perspective on when things are happening. And I see this being something that we are going to be using and building for years to come. So we have one more week in our Explorers unit as I'm filming this. I'm going to be pulling in this book as well, which is an old Sunlight book, came from my mom's shelves. So this goes over a shorter recap, because this is talking about lots of different explorers throughout history, but we're just going to go over the pages about Columbus and Magellan, which give a shorter summary of the journey, kind of big picture summary. We are also going to eat some hardtack. I bought the yuckiest crackers I could find at the grocery store. We're going to call them hardtack and eat them. My boys were very interested in descriptions of what the men on Magellan's voyage were eating when they ran out of food. That's always a very interesting topic when you're studying explorers. Also for science, I just wanted to give an update. We're using Sunlight Science. Really enjoying that, especially the videos. I did not have the videos for the Sunlight Kindergarten Science, so first grade Sunlight A is the first one we've had videos for. They are really funny. I enjoy watching them and talking about them. I think they're really well done. And we're also doing this, Apology is Astronomy, for our more deep dive into a topic this year. And the notebook has been a lot of fun. Again, I'm doing it with my son. I'm not just handing this to a first grader and expecting him to know what to do with it. This, to me, this very early elementary stage is the time when I'm modeling note-taking. I'm modeling, hey, what's important for us to write down? But he's drawing pictures in this. He loves to draw pictures of people being stranded on Mercury or Venus and the problems that they encounter there. But we're up to Venus now. We're studying Venus. We studied the sun, Mercury, Venus, like done a few introductory lessons as we're going through this. A lot of fun, and the student notebook has definitely, I think, really helped the information stick. When I first started with lesson 1 of astronomy and was reading aloud like the first 3 pages, I was like, wow, there's a lot of pretty advanced vocabulary in this, especially because we're just not really a spacey family. We don't tend to talk about space a lot. So I was like, this is a lot of new vocabulary. I don't know how well this is gonna go with a 6-year-old, but the amount of review that is incorporated when you're using the activities, all the activities in the student notebook, and then by the time we get to the test, or what do you remember section at the end of the lesson, I'm finding he does remember it. He does remember the vocabulary. It is sticking. I don't think it would stick as well if we just, read it aloud and moved on, but having the opportunity to notebook, do these review activities, make the mini books about the different planets is really helping it to stick for him. One activity that he really loved that was in the notebook was giving a speech on what you've learned about the sun. He was just so excited when I told him he was gonna give a speech, and he started taking out his own notes. He made his own diagram with all the information that he thought was interesting, which what he thought was the most interesting was how many of each planet could fit inside the sun. So he copied out the entire diagram of how many planets of Earth or Mercury or Venus could fit inside the sun, because he really wanted to have that visual to give his speech. And he gave his speech to his grandma and his aunt, and he really was excited about that. Now he's been asking me with every other planet, do I get to give a speech? And I should probably just say yes, right? So that is my April homeschool update. And as for baby, I was actually kind of expecting that I would be having him in the carrier while filming this video, and then I would just say, the way I'm homeschooling with a baby is the way I'm filming this video, is basically baby's in my arms or in my carrier much of the time. However, he is actually taking a nap right now. So sometimes he does take naps in his actual crib, and I also homeschool like that too. The way we homeschool with the baby is we just do it, and he's along for the ride. He is such a happy, such a friendly little guy. We live in a city. We live right next to a neighborhood park, and when we take the boys to the park in the afternoon, all the aunties at the park want to hold him, so he gets passed around a lot around the neighborhood and the aunties. He is very well loved by our community, and I'm very glad that he's a very naturally social and friendly baby, because he just rolls with it. All right, don't forget to share with me some of your homeschool adventures from the month of April, and I'll be seeing you next time. Bye.